Good morning, everybody. Today's topic is biological oxidation and electron transport chain. Now, living cells and organisms, they need energy for survival, for their growth, and for reproduction. The sources of chemical energy is from the food that we take in, that is from carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. The oxidation of these fuels will release energy, and this is captured as ATP by oxidative phosphorylation and is utilized for the various biological functions. During this process, chemical energy can be transformed into heat, it can be transformed into electrical energy, or it can be transformed into energy which is required for motion, that is for the muscle contraction, etc. Now, this is the pathway of oxidation of foodstuffs, which occurs in three phases. In the first phase, we can see that the final products of breakdown of proteins, that is amino acids, lipids, fatty acids, and carbohydrates, glucose, through their respective pathways can be converted into acetyl-CoA. So acetyl-CoA is the central pole which is formed from the breakdown of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Now, what happens to this acetyl-CoA? Acetyl-CoA will now enter the citric acid cycle, and there are 4 steps in which the electrons are removed or abstracted. One is in the step where we have the utilization of isocitrate dehydrogenase, second alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, third is succinate dehydrogenase, and fourth is malate dehydrogenase. These electrons are carried in the form of NADH or FADH2, and they are funneled into the electron transport chain. And in the end, we find that these electrons are finally converted to, that is, it reduces oxygen to water, producing ATP, and this process is known as oxidative phosphorylation. Now, let's look at some of the terminologies. First is biological oxidation. Biological oxidation is the transfer of electrons from the reduced coenzymes through the respiratory chain to oxygen. Oxidative phosphorylation, the energy which is released during the process of biological oxidation is trapped as ATP. This coupling of oxidation and phosphorylation is known as oxidative phosphorylation. The electron transport chain. This is a chain of electron carriers through which the electrons are transferred. The flow is from more electronegative to more electropositive components. Now, let's look at some of the simple definitions like oxidation. What is oxidation? Oxidation is defined as the loss of electrons. Reduction means the gain of electrons. Oxidation and reduction can occur as coupled reactions in cells. So, a substrate can be oxidized by losing electrons, and an acceptor can get reduced by gaining electrons. So, if you look at the figure, the substrate A, when it gives up its electrons, it gets oxidized. So, A is oxidized by losing its electrons. Whereas the electron is accepted by B, and B is getting reduced by gaining the electrons. Okay. So, during oxidation, the transfer or flow of electrons is from electron-rich compounds to electron-poor compounds. These two reactions can therefore act as a conjugate pair or a conjugate redox pair. So, the pair of electron donor and acceptor is called as a conjugate redox pair. Now, this figure gives us the standard redox potentials of redox pairs which we see in the electron transport chain. So, substances having a lower affinity for electrons compared to hydrogen have a negative redox potential. So those with negative redox potential, as you can see here, is NADH and FADH2. Okay, and those with substances having a higher affinity for electrons compared to hydrogen have got a positive redox potential. So here are the examples of those with positive redox potentials. You have cytochrome B, ubiquinone, cytochrome C, etc. So NADH is a strong reducing agent, whereas oxygen is a strong oxidant. NADH is highly electronegative, that is minus 0.32 volts is the redox potential of NADH, whereas oxygen is strongly electropositive, the redox potential being plus 0.82 volts. Now, what is the site where the respiratory chain or oxidative phosphorylation occurs? The site is the mitochondria. Let's briefly look at the structure of mitochondria. The mitochondria has got an outer membrane which is permeable to most of the metabolites. It is also an inner membrane which is selectively permeable, and the inner membrane encloses a matrix. So in the figure you can see the outer membrane, the inner membrane. The inner membrane, as you can see, is folded, and the folds of the inner membrane is known as cristae, and this increases the surface area of the inner membrane. So the one which is bluish in color is the matrix, which is the space within the inner membrane. So oxidative phosphorylation occurs in the mitochondrium. The electron transport chain and the enzyme which synthesizes ATP, which is known as the ATP synthase complex, are all present in the inner mitochondrial membrane. An intact mitochondrial is essential for the development of the electrochemical gradient, which is essential for this process of oxidation and phosphorylation to occur. So this figure gives us it's a diagrammatic representation of the electron transport chain. So we see the inner mitochondrial membrane. It has got 4 membrane bound complexes, that is complex 1, complex 2, complex 3 and complex 4, and 2 mobile carriers. Complex 1 is the one which is most electronegative, that is the entry of NADH occurs at complex 1, and as you know, NADH is strongly electronegative, that is redox potential is minus 0.32 volts, and complex 4 is most electropositive because this is where oxygen is being reduced to water, and you know that oxygen is highly electropositive. It is carrying a charge of redox potential of 0.82 volts. So the redox span is around 1.1 volts. The last is, which we can regard as complex 5, which is actually the ATP synthase complex, and that is where the synthesis of ATP occurs. Now in this figure we can see that each complex can accept or donate electrons to the mobile carrier. So complex 1 is donating its electron to the mobile carrier ubiquinone. Complex 2 was also donating its electrons to the mobile carrier ubiquinone. Ubiquinone then carries the electrons to complex 3. From complex 3 the electrons are carried on by cytochrome C to complex 4. Okay, and here finally the oxygen is being reduced to water. So electrons are passed from one carrier to the other till it finally combines with oxygen, causing it to be reduced to water. Now this flow of electrons from one complex to the other results in the pumping of protons to the intermembrane space. So you can see the collection of protons in the intermembrane space from the matrix across the inner mitochondrial membrane, it goes into the intermembrane space. Now let's look at complex 1. The electron carriers, I told you, are arranged in the form of 4 enzyme complexes. The complex 1 is known as the NADH coenzyme Q reductase complex or the NADH dehydrogenase complex. It transfers electrons from NADH to coenzyme Q. So you can see the passage of electrons. NADH transfers its electrons to FMN, it gets oxidized to NAD. FMN gets reduced to FMNH2. So the reduced FMN then transfers the electrons to oxidized FES. FES is iron sulfur clusters, which then gets reduced. The reduced iron sulfur clusters then transfers its electrons to coenzyme Q, which in turn gets reduced. So the flow of 2 electrons from NADH to coenzyme Q results in the pumping of 4 protons or hydrogen ions to the intermembrane space. Now let's look at complex 2. The complex 2 is known as the succinate coenzyme Q reductase complex. Okay. Now what happens in this complex? Succinate will transfer the electrons to FAD and get oxidized to fumarate. FAD gets reduced to FADH2. FADH2 then transfers its electrons to oxidized iron sulfur clusters, which gets reduced to reduced form of iron sulfur clusters, which then transfers the electrons to coenzyme Q, which then gets reduced. Now this complex 2 does not pump any protons to the intermembrane space. So less ATP is formed by the oxidation of reduced FADH2 as compared to NADH2. Now let's look at complex 3. Complex 3 is known as the coenzyme Q cytochrome reductase complex. This complex contains cytochrome B, cytochrome C1 and the iron sulfur proteins. So the electrons are transferred from the reduced mobile carrier, that is reduced coenzyme Q, to cytochrome B to cytochrome C1, which is then passed to the second mobile carrier, which is cytochrome C. In this passage of electrons from coenzyme Q to cytochrome C, there is the transfer of 4 protons from the matrix to the intermembrane space. So in the last you can see complex 3, this is the passage of electrons, coenzyme Q to iron sulfur clusters, then from there to cytochrome B, cytochrome C1 and finally to the mobile carrier, that is cytochrome C. What happens in complex 4? Complex 4 is known as the cytochrome C oxidase complex and is the terminal portion of the redox chain. It consists of cytochrome A, A3 and a copper center. So from cytochrome C, it is transferring the electrons, that is the mobile carrier cytochrome C transfers the electrons through the cytochrome A, A3 and the copper centers to molecular oxygen, and it then reduces oxygen to water. So you can see in the diagram complex 4, this is the passage of electrons from cytochrome C to cytochrome A, A3 and finally to oxygen, which gets reduced. During this passage of electrons, 2 protons are transferred across the membrane. Now we come to what is the energy that we get through this electron transfer. The energy of electron transfer drives 10 protons, that is 4 protons from complex 1, 4 protons from complex 3 and 2 protons from complex 4. Complex 2, as I told you, does not drive any protons to the intermembrane space. So 10 protons are released. So there are two components of the proton motive force. Now, because of the pumping of protons to the intermembrane space, there is an unequal distribution of hydrogen ion on the two sides of the inner mitochondrial membrane. And this causes the development of a proton gradient across the inner mitochondrial membrane. So now what are the two components of this gradient? One, we have the chemical potential energy due to the difference in the concentration of hydrogen ions, and an electrical potential energy due to the difference in charge on the two sides of the inner mitochondrial membrane. So one is a chemical potential energy because of the difference in concentration of hydrogen ions, and second is the electrical potential energy due to a difference in the charge on the two sides of the inner mitochondrial membrane. The energy inherent in this gradient is used to synthesize ATP from ADP and PI and is catalyzed by the enzyme ATP synthase. So the formation of ATP is termed as phosphorylation, which is coupled with the biological oxidation, and therefore it is known as biological oxidative phosphorylation. So to explain this, we have what is known as the chemiosmotic theory, which is proposed by a British biochemist known as Peter Michell in 1961. This explains the mechanism of oxidative phosphorylation. The energy which is released during the transport of electrons from one carrier to another allows protons to be pumped across the inner mitochondrial membrane to the intermembrane space. The inner mitochondrial membrane is impermeable to protons. So their pumping results in the generation of an electrochemical potential, or which is also known as the proton motive force. This proton motive force makes the hydrogen to flow back into the mitochondrial matrix down its electrochemical gradient through the ATP synthase complex. Okay, so you have the structure of the ATP synthase complex. The head of the ATP synthase complex is protruding into the matrix, whereas the base of the ATP synthase complex, it spans the inner mitochondrial membrane. So the protons from the intermembrane space are now rotating the base of this enzyme ATP synthase complex, and so there is a diffusion, a passive diffusion of the protons from the intermembrane space into the base of the ATP synthase complex, which drives that disc-like structure, the base of the enzyme, and in this process it moves the various subunits of the head of this enzyme, that is of the ATP synthase complex, for the synthesis of ATP. Okay, in this process ADP plus PI will react to give rise to ATP. So the free energy or the protons which has accumulated in the inner membrane space, intermembrane space, is released as hydrogen ions and flows back through this ATP synthase complex, and in this process ADP is converted plus PI is converted to ATP. So there is a coupling of oxidation and phosphorylation. Now the next aspect we have to look at when we think of the ETC or the electron transport chain are the inhibitors of oxidative phosphorylation. That is, what are the inhibitors which inhibit synthesis of ATP from ADP and PI? Now one type blocks the flow of electrons in the electron transport chain, and the second type inhibits the ATP synthase complex. The end result is same, that is, there is no synthesis of ATP. So this figure which gives you very nicely the various inhibitors and the site where it inhibits. So inhibitors like pyrisidine, amobarbitol, rotenone, They inhibit the passage of electrons from complex 1 to coenzyme Q. Malonate inhibits the transfer of electrons from succinate to complex 2. Inhibitors like carboxyn inhibits the passage of electrons from complex 2 to coenzyme Q. Inhibitors like antimycin A and BAL, they inhibit the passage of electrons from complex 3 to cytochrome C. And inhibitors like hydrogen sulfide, poisons like carbon monoxide, cyanide, they inhibit complex 4 and prevent the reduction of oxygen to water. So as I had described in the figure, these inhibitors act at various sites and blocks the flow of electrons. So for passage from complex 1 to coenzyme Q, you have sedatives like barbiturates, amobarbital, they block the transfer from iron sulfur clusters to coenzyme Q of complex 1. Complex 2, I told you, malonate is an inhibitor of complex 2. Complex 3, BAL or British anti-Lewisite is used, which is used in the treatment of heavy metal poisoning as a chelating agent, is also an inhibitor and interferes at complex 3. Also antibiotics like antimycin A and dimercaprol. Complex 4, you have the classical poisons like carbon monoxide, cyanide and hydrogen sulfide, which can totally arrest respiration. Cyanide binds to the heme of cytochrome A3 of complex 4. There are inhibitors which block the ATP synthase activity. One is oligomycin. It inhibits the flow of electrons through the FO subunit of the ATP synthase complex, preventing ATP synthesis. Then there are inhibitors of ADP-ATP transport, that is, the inhibitor's name is atractyloside. They inhibit the transport of ADP and ATP. There are certain inhibitors which decrease oxidative phosphorylation, like when ADP concentration is decreased, there is inhibition of ATP synthesis. Valinomycin, it allows potassium to permeate through the mitochondria and it dissipates the proton gradient, thereby inhibiting the oxidative phosphorylation. So those which destroy the proton gradient is known as the uncouplers. So what does the uncouplers do? They collapse the proton gradient, and because of that the hydrogen ions will now diffuse back into the matrix. So it does not go through the ATP synthase complex, it is able to diffuse back through the membrane. Okay, so it equalizes the proton concentration of both sides of the membrane, and thereby this proton leak prevents the formation of ATP by the ATP synthase complex. So no energy is captured as ATP. So these uncouplers can be ionophores also. They are hydrophobic molecules that dissipate the osmotic gradients by inserting themselves into the membrane and forming a channel. The chemical uncouplers are 2,4-dinitrophenol and 2,4-dinitrocresol, and the physiological uncouplers are thyroxine and thermogenin. Now what is this thermogenin? Thermogenin is a protein which is present in mitochondria of the brown adipose tissue. It is present in all newborn mammals including humans, and it acts as a channel for the migration of protons from the intermembrane space into the matrix. So it is an uncoupler of oxidative phosphorylation. So what happens to the energy of biological oxidation? It is released as heat. It is not trapped as ATP, but it's released as heat, and this heat is used to warm newborn babies and maintain its body temperature. The next aspect we have to learn is the high energy compounds. or energy rich compounds. So these high energy compounds are related to ATP. So these high energy compounds on hydrolysis will yield free energy equal to or greater than that of ATP. So what is the energy which we obtain through the hydrolysis of ATP? That is, the delta G of ATP is minus 7.3 kilocalories per mole. So compounds which liberate energy which is less than 7.3 kilocalories are known as low energy compounds. So we can see the ATP, the energy of hydrolysis is 7.3 kilocalories, and anything which is greater than 7.3, that is the energy which is released which is higher than that of ATP, like phosphoenol pyruvate, it is 14.8, 1,3-biphosphoglycerate is 11.8, creatine phosphate is 10.3. So all those who release this or whose standard free energy is higher than that of ATP are known as the high energy compounds. And those which release energy less than that of ATP, like glucose 1-phosphate 5.0, pyrophosphate 4.6, glucose 6-phosphate 3.3, glycerol 3-phosphate 2.2, they are all low energy compounds. So we have the high energy compounds, examples like ATP, GTP, UTP, then the phosphoenol pyruvate, carbamyl phosphate, creatine phosphates, they are all high energy compounds. And examples of low energy compounds, you have glucose 1-phosphate, glucose 6-phosphate, fructose phosphate, 1-phosphate, etc. Now ATP is the energy currency of the cell, and it's a nucleotide with 3 high energy phosphate bonds. When the phosphate bonds are broken, it releases energy, and as you can see here, when the first phosphate, the triphosphate, when first phosphate bond is broken, it releases 7.3 kilocalories per mole. Second phosphate broken, it gives off 6.6 kilocalories per mole. Phosphagens are high energy phosphate compounds which act as reservoirs and used to synthesize ATP quickly when there is a rapid depletion of ATP, like in running. So an ideal example of a phosphagen is creatine phosphate, which is present in the muscle. So you see creatine phosphate, when it's broken down to creatine, it immediately gives rise to one molecule of ATP. So it is a good source of energy, where energy is required very fast. Okay, so within 10 to 15 seconds you are able to get that in energy, and it is ideal for that of a sprinter. So this finishes the topic on biological oxidation and oxidative phosphorylation. Thank you.